Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have more Jurassic World Dominion today. Yes, it seems like that's almost all we look at anymore because there's just so much that has been released lately, and I'm trying to get through all of it to make sure you guys have reviews of everything you might be interested in picking up, so you can go ahead and run to your local Walmart or Target and grab it for yourself if you do want to purchase them. This one is another of the Roar Strikers. This is the third in the line, the Rajasaurus, and it looks pretty much as cool as the Scorpiovinator did, if you ask me. A very cool choice on the part of Mattel to create a Rajasaurus. We don't have very many models out there of this species, so one in the Mattel line definitely is a fun addition. And you can see as far as the box art goes, again, it's really your basic Jurassic World Dominion box art. Nothing incredible, different, or flashy about it. And then here on the back, you can see a sneak peek of the action feature, as well as the other figures that are in the line, all of which we have reviewed except for the Ankylosaurus, and that one will be, of course, next. So let's go ahead, pop this out of the box, and check it out. So here is our Rajasaurus out of the box, and definitely looking very, very nice. I'm definitely a big fan of that very cool osteoderm-like appearance to the majority of the figure, like almost ridge-like, very large osteoderms that are pretty much littering this figure. That definitely looks fun, and the paint scheme is nice. It could have been really nice, but of course, in true Mattel fashion, we stopped the alternate coloration right here. However, this is even worse than normal because not only do we stop it in the hip region, we actually stop it before the hip region. Most times we kind of stop it out here a little bit after the hips, but this time we stop it prior to ever reaching the hip region. So again, in what could be an amazing figure if it had just a little bit of extra paintwork, we are let down when it comes to that aspect of the figure. But the sculpt looks gorgeous, pretty much like every other Mattel figure, so let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Rajasaurus, you can see detail-wise it is just overloaded with detail, and the osteoderm appearance is really abundant here on the face as well. It almost looks like a mountain formation in the shape of a dinosaur head. There's just so much of a rocky appearance to the head sculpt of this dinosaur. It's very interesting, the take that we have on it from Mattel, and you can see that as far as the actual scale detail goes, it looks really good, especially down here on the lower jaw. You can see some beautiful, very vibrant scale detail. But again, as we lead back here further into the lower jaw, we again have those very large, like scoot-like osteoderms. You can see them up here in the snout. You can see them here under the eye area, up here above the eye, running like up here along the top of the head. They are just pretty much everywhere. We have a nice tone of brown for the head. We also have some nice blues that kind of splotch here around the eye, and then some red around the eye socket area, and then you have a yellow with a black pupil for the eye itself. Really nice to see a black pupil again, and it's sad to see that the paintwork gets so lackluster further back into the figure, because here in the face, like, there's a good bit of paint application, and it definitely makes the figure as a whole look very nice. You can also see that we do have an alternate tone of color up here on the top of the head with kind of like an off-white, and it's the same similar coloration that we have here for the teeth, and you can see the teeth do sport a bit of a glossy look, as well as the inside of the mouth. You can also see sports a nice glossy look. The tongue and everything, definitely very nicely sculpted out tongue, beautiful texturing to the tongue. You can see the inside of the upper side of the mouth as well, looks very good. And then the paintwork over here looks exactly like we saw on the previous side. Very nice, very precise. You can see a gloss coat for the eye as well. And it's nice to see so many new Dominion figures having really nice eye paint. I was a little worried when I had acquired my 5-inch basic figures because the eye paint on the Giganotosaurus was absolutely awful. So it immediately struck fear in me as far as this line goes and the potential for some really badly misplaced eyes on the figures. But luckily for us, that is not the case. It seems like for the most part, the eyes are pretty well done on the majority of the stuff I've taken a look at from the Dominion line. If you take a look up here at the top of the head, again, you can see scales galore as you move along the course of the figure. Those are very nicely sculpted out scales, very reptilian-like scales. You can see more osteoderms picking up here in the neck region. There is definitely a speckling that I can see here on the figure, kind of like a dark blue speckling, similar to the color that we have up here on the top of the figure. We have some really tall kind of like ridges running down the back of the neck, of the dinosaur as well. You can see some nice skin wrinkles and stuff here as you move down a little further toward the throat. You can see some hanging skin in the throat itself. And again, this light coloration that we have for the lower jaw tapers off really quickly in the throat region before ever reaching the underside of the figure, which, as always, is definitely a downside. It would have been way nicer to have that coloration run the entire underside, but unfortunately, that is not the case. As you move back here a little further into the body, you start to again see some more of the osteoderms kind of overtaking a large portion of the upper side of the dinosaur, some more of that kind of splotchy blue littering the back and then leaking down here into the side. You can kind of pick up on the rib cage, and again you can see just scales galore. The scales are really nicely done on this figure. Some nice muscle definition as you move down into the arm, and you also have a beautiful hand sculpt with some more of those speckles showing up there in the hand. Unfortunately, as always, no painted nails. They kind of look like they might have a bit of a gloss coat, but not really so much. As you move back up here, again, you can see that we have quite a few rows of these osteoderms running along the course of the dinosaur, almost like a ridge line running down different areas here of the back of the dinosaur. And you can see some nice muscle definition in the thigh. As you move down the thigh, you can see the kneecap is very nicely elaborated here on the front of the sculpt. Beautiful calf muscle here on the back, and then leading down into the foot. The foot sculpt looks pretty good, but the toes are like really scrunched together, which isn't something you usually see when it comes to a Mattel figure. But the scoots down the toes look very nice. The scale detail and everything down here in the foot definitely looks fantastic. You have a nice dew claw here on the other side of the leg, but very interesting the way that they have that dew claw positioned. And then we lead back up here into the tail. You can see a few more kind of like skin wrinkles and stuff as you lead out the length of the tail. I am picking up on some of the speckling, like you can see it up here on the top. And every so often I see some of the speckling, but outside of the speckling, there is no coloration on the tail at all aside from the brown. And you can see no color on the underside, no color on the upper side, which really does make the figure look like it's almost like half painted. So definitely not the best paint application, but the sculpt is very nice. Of course, the tail is definitely shorter than it should be, but the tail length at least looks a little better, I think, on this one than it did on the recent Yanxuanosaurus. You can see detail-wise, though, this side looks pretty much the same. You're really not going to see much difference on an articulated figure like this. You can see that this leg is trailing. As far as the other leg, it is leading over there, so that's about the only real difference that you're going to see on this side compared to the other side. That definitely gives you a little bit of a better view here of the stomach region and the rib cage and everything, because this leg is again pulled back a little bit further, but you can see it follows that same style of a very rocky kind of a look as far as these very large osteoderms running all through the course of the figure. I don't even know, they're so big, would they still be considered osteoderms? Like, they're just absolutely massive, like ridges running along the course of the figure. We do have the DNA code up here on the back, which isn't too much of an eyesore on this one. If I can pop this out, I have such a hard time doing this sometimes. There we go. We've got the Jurassic logo on this side, and then when we turn it around, we have the actual fax app code over here for you to add this figure to your collection. So as a whole, I think the sculpt is really nice. Very interesting take for the species, but it is a beautiful sculpt with a very lackluster paint job. As far as articulation, you can see we do have the articulation in the jaw. We also have articulation in the neck. And I knew that was going to happen because this is a sound version of a figure here. You also have the articulation in the arm, forward and back, out away from the body. Very nice articulation there. We have the articulation of the legs, which is really smooth. You can feel a little bit of a jerkiness to it, but for the most part, it moves really easily. We can also move the legs out away from the body, so you can see a little bit of wiggle room there. And then we have a swivel tail like usual, but that doesn't really do much for anybody, I would think. And then as far as the action feature goes, of course, we're going to operate it the same way that we did for the Triceratops and Scorpiovenator recently. So we'll push the dinosaur down. Some okay noises. It is sad to see that we consistently reuse the same sort of like theropod style noises for so many different figures. It would be nice if they would come up with some different noises for the different dinosaurs just to give them their own individuality, but it still works. Kids aren't going to complain, but you know, it's something that us adult collectors find a little bit of a pet peeve with. But the action feature works really nicely, very smooth action feature overall, with some fairly cool noises. As far as a size goes, for a length, we're looking at right about 13 inches, maybe a little bit over, closing in at 13 and a quarter, potentially, if you'd stay still here. I'd say just a little over 13 inches, or around 33 and a half centimeters. And then for a height to these ridges here on the back of the neck, about 5¼ inches, or 13 and a half centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Rajasaurus, and you can definitely see a good size on this figure. As per usual, when it comes to this line, it's going to follow right in the same size range as like previous figures like Roarovores or Roar Attacks, things like that. These usually all fall right in a very similar size range as each other. So to show you that, there is the recent Scorpiovinator next to the Rajasaurus, and although I would say the Scorpiovinator is a little tiny bit bigger, you can definitely see that they have a very similar size overall. So not too different when it comes to, your standard Roarovore sized figure. So this Rajasaurus is another absolutely awesome species to enter the line. I am absolutely loving the fact that Mattel has been really giving us some obscure species over time, and I have no doubt that they will continue to do that into the future. I have received so many awesome figures into my collection from the Mattel line as far as different species that I never in a million years would have told you, a few years back that we would have in the Jurassic line, but Mattel continues to impress me when it comes to their species choices, and this is another great one with a Rajasaurus. And I think this sculpt is very unique, very different, but at the same time really cool. The osteoderm-like look to it is maybe a little much at times, but at the same time, I think it looks neat and causes it to have a unique appearance to it, which in my opinion is definitely a very fun aspect to the figure. And with all of those kind of bumpy osteoderms all over the course of the figure, that would definitely be something that could make for a fun repaint, just trying to paint all of those out, giving it, again, a very unique and interesting appearance. I almost want to paint it like the Allosaurus from Land of the Lost, the Will Ferrell film, because the Allosaurus in that has like a really cool color scheme to it that I feel like would work well when it comes to like the bumpy osteoderms and everything all over this figure. But the paint job that we have actually been given for this one, not so great. It looks nice from the head until we reach about the hip region, but it's another one of those instances where it feels like it was almost like getting a nice paint job and they gave up halfway through, because the second half of the figure really doesn't have any paintwork to it like at all, aside from some speckles. The first half of the figure, in my opinion, looks fantastic color-wise, and then again just decreases to the point of nothing on the second half. And of course, no painted nails is definitely a downside, and another thing that Mattel really needs to work on. But the articulation is really nice, really smooth. We have an awesome action feature that works really smoothly, and a nice, set of noises for the dinosaur. Even though I would like something a little more unique once in a while, it still works pretty well for the figure overall. So definitely another awesome figure entering the Mattel line, and another one that I really recommend picking up. So my suggestion, head to your local Target. Walmart is so hit or miss when it comes to these releases so far that if I were you, I would definitely just head to your local Target, as they seem to be pretty well stocked currently when it comes to the Dominion line. So make sure you check Target. I will also include a link in the description where I believe you can still order this online at target.com. And again, one way or another, I really recommend picking the figure up. Even if it doesn't have the best paint job, it's a fantastic species and a really nice sculpt. So make sure you grab this, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.